So let's call the meeting to order. First order of business is any additions, removals, or modifications to the agenda. I would like to add just a brief update on flood recovery before we talk about the work plan. And I'd like to pull the last meeting minutes off of the consent agenda. I have a change I want to suggest.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay.
Any other changes? Second item is public forum. Is anybody here for a non-agenda item, just for a public comment? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Russell and Barbara Challen. We have a place up at the top of Dana Hill. I came in last year, made the same request for 3 places that the water bars have really deteriorated, and it's pretty rough going over them. And we'd like to get some material put in each of those water bars.
And we did make some improvements last year, correct?
I don't believe so.
I believe we did, but whether they came across, maybe it might not have been as significant. I thought we did, but
I know the year before
okay, maybe that's one.
it was done, but last year nothing was
Were
done.
you up there today?
I was not, so I have no idea what it's like now.
Yeah, you know, our road crew's been pretty out straight the last couple of days, but I know the bottom of the hill it took a lot of
Yeah,
damage.
this is maybe 2/3 of the way up.
Okay. I can't promise anything about timing, given everything else, but we'll talk to the
It's
crew about it.
understood.
Can we,
What's that?
understood, I'm sorry. He said understood.
Okay.
Could you say the name of the road one more time?
Dana Hill.
Oh, it's Dana Hill, okay.
Yes.
Alice?
Yeah, I spoke to Meg Illy during that, and I texted everybody what Meg told me about the water flow.
Yeah, that's what, the lower part of the road took a lot of water damage. I don't think we know what happened higher up the hill.
Right.
Yeah. Meg is the horse farm, the horse riding farm up there, and she mentioned 2 things to me. One, she sent pictures, which I forwarded to you and down to Keith Cubbin at CVRPC. It was passable up there, but with a lot of
Ruts.
road damage, you know, like the usual you see in a flood. And she said the one thing that struck her was there is a significant water flow behind her property, of water that was behind her property, heading in pretty steady to Millbrook. And she had never seen that before in her years of living there. And also mentioned that she had some water in one of her back rooms, and she'd never had that before. So, yeah, that's what she told me, but it was passable.
Right. This is, I'm not bringing that issue up. I'm bringing like 1.5 miles up the road
Yeah,
is where the water bars have been pretty deteriorated. That's it.
No,
Thank you.
okay, no, appreciate it. I'm pretty familiar with the road, and I think you're right, it was last year, the year before, because I know it's something.
And I'd have to say the work that was done came just in time, because 2 days later, there was a emergency rescue of a mountain biker. And the ambulance was able to get up the road because of that work. So, something to keep in mind.
No, there's a lot more activity up there than there used to be.
Huge. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Be safe. Hi.
So the second item on the agenda is the Meadow Road Bridge and Covered Bridge contingency. I guess maybe you could frame why it's worded that way. I think the main focus is the Meadow Road.
It is.
In
I
our-
think I just worded it weird because it doesn't even it makes sense to me, but yes.
yeah. It's Meadow Road, and I have some information on Tremblay.
Yeah, hold on a second, Alice, we'll get to
One
that.
second.
So for background, the Meadow Road Bridge has been a growing concern to the town. We had an inspection report, I guess now it's close to 3 years ago, that identified concerns and issues, but it wasn't an urgent, flashing red light. We had another inspection after last July's flood, which was a flashing red light. It's pretty deteriorated. Folks from V-Trans have acknowledge that the use of the road during the detour after last year's flood really hammered it and caused a lot of deterioration that was unanticipated. And since that time, we've been working in part with FEMA, reaching out with V-Trans to try to put a plan together for either repairing or replacing it. And Alice, as our representative to Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission and the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission Transportation Advisory Commission, and York, as our newish town administrator, who's only been working on this for now a couple of months, has been working with FEMA and V-Trans on possible solutions. So, Alice, you've done a lot of research onto this. Do you want to kind of give your perspective?
Yeah, I've been working with Keith Cubbin at CVRPC, and when we didn't have our ACE town administrator, I was helping out Fred Messer, who was noticing the problems with the bridge. And so we started working with Keith. Now, this past summer, in the July 23rd or July 30th V-Trans inspection, the bridge was downgraded from satisfactory to poor, which is its last inspection before V-Trans would officially close the bridge. And Brian, I sent you, and you can, York can distribute it to the rest of the planning commission. I grabbed some excerpts out of the inspection report that describes what's called general observations, and it really highlights the reasons why the bridge was downgraded to poor, and also that the accepted weight limit was lowered, and that got posted. What Keith and I have done has been finding out from engineering companies, and we've got our friends Dubois and King, and we also have SLR, which really would be, to me, I recommend them. The first thing that has to happen is a study and getting an engineering design for replacing that bridge. That would run in the area of $250,000. And what that would do would give us the first step in A, can it be repaired? And that's looking less and less likely, or B, a replacement and a new bridge. Keith Cubbin could, CVRPC, could manage this project for us, and that would be included in that $250K price tag. Now, the thing was, how do we pay for that? So Keith and I have also been researching grant opportunities, like you've been pursuing FEMA money for this. We've been pursuing other grant opportunities to really work on this and secure the funds. One of the things that Keith found was there was a Biden administration infrastructure program that included a grant called Rural and Tribal Assistance Pilot, and we really could fit the criteria in that category for the Meadow Road Bridge, and it was 100% funding, federal program. So we pursued that one right away with the 100%, no match on town. And we were ready for the submission date, and as of right now, that program by federal funding has been pulled. And the word we were given was, wait and we'll let you know when you can apply for this. And we're not hearing anything on that. Getting federal funding becomes more and more of an issue. So the other one that I started to look at was the hazard mitigation grant program that Vermont Emergency Management has. I got wind of the 20 million they still have. Contacted VEM. The HMGP Hazard Mitigation Program is not open right now, but you can put in a pre-application for when they open that again. They also told me to go to the Public Assistance Program, which is also mentioned in the V-Trans book, Show Me the Money. And that would be 75%, 25%. And that again is a FEMA program. And again, it's, can we qualify this? Can we qualify it for it? And is that money still available? So Keith and I are working on that one right now. Keep in mind that for all of these grants, FEMA, if it's FEMA funding, they're gonna look at all of the previous inspections. And they're gonna look at any kind of deferred maintenance to make a decision. We're also waiting on District 6. They have not responded yet to a request for a meeting to find out what they may still have available in their funds. York has requested this, and we're not getting a response from them yet. I sense that's what's happening is with the legislature just approving the transportation budget, that if it's state money, all of these state agencies as part of V-Trans, they're all looking at their money and their priority projects for the coming years. I also went to Director of Finance for V-Trans, to their STIP program, which is their State Transportation Infrastructure Program. There would not be funding in there. They, again, kicked us back to state money through District 6. Contingency on this? Well, what do we do if the bridge closes? It would be blocked off with Jersey barriers, and it would be closed. And what the town could do is rent a temporary bridge through District 6. The town would have to pay the cost for the installation of that temporary bridge, and then it's $2,000 a month around that figure for the bridge until something else goes in, if that's what the town chooses to do.
Alice,
yeah.
if I may, what's the availability of that bridge?
That's what we're trying to get to from District 6 also.
Well, if you recall, when we had a meeting, Fred, you and I were at with District 6 and some other folks, and Alice and Keith from CVRPC in the early winter, I think. And at that time, I think their temporary bridges, they were scrambling for them because of the flood.
That's,
But,
was my
Yeah.
but they did say that they thought they would be available regionally. Well, but that's something we need to
check into.
You know, the one thing that blew my mind is the $250,000 cost, even
Yeah.
for design. But I don't think an assessment and some recommendations for a path forward would take nearly that amount of money.
And Brian, to piggyback on that,
Yeah.
I talked to FEMA about that, and they were floored. They were like, we literally don't understand what you're talking about.
And I talked to another, folks from other towns who said the same thing, that it's in thousands, not hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, and that's why FEMA's willing to pay up, like, it's in their budget. But you don't necessarily get it, there's a whole bunch of ifs under it, but like $90, $100 or so. And that's supposed to be like 80% of the cost of
Yeah.
that assessment that we need.
Yeah.
So I think.
No, I understand that, and I'm still pushing on that issue too. going, really? Because I also did some work on the Tremblay Bridge and what it might need. And we could get somebody in, like, the recommendation from CVRPC is to get a qualified bridge person to come in, engineer to look at it. And for that, they're just quoting 10 to 15,000.
Yes.
Go in and assess the Tremblay Road Bridge. So I'm still pushing that one. The Tremblay Road Bridge, from the report, has deck problems, especially along the sides of it that are near the guardrails. But the other big problem that's in the inspection report is it's got undersized bolts and missing bolts that really ought to get replaced and or fix the missing bolts. So I don't think that one is going to require as much, but it really is looking like this Meadow Road Bridge, for some reason, is a big ticket item.
Well, I
And
think we need to pursue other options for an assessment.
Yeah.
And when we met with Michelle from District 6 and folks a few months ago, at that time, they thought they had discretionary funds available. Isn't that right, Alice?
Yes, they thought they had discretionary funds. I don't know what they have now. And that's why we're frustrated trying to get a meeting with them.
Yeah.
Well, Michelle has responded to me just in terms of an email weeks ago saying, we are gonna start looking at contingency plans and we'll let you know. I think we're meeting with some of the V-Trans about the flooding this week, and my hope will be to maybe just mention it. And also, Josh Schwartz, who's here tonight, met with the bridge inspector, and so I think there's conversations happening. And FEMA is also visiting here Thursday, is the plan, and I'm hoping to make some.
I'm sorry, who is visiting?
FEMA.
Okay.
And I'm hoping to have, like, visit that bridge and look at it and see if I can get more information on how to, move forward with it, even if it's, and also have the V-Trans maybe giving us an idea of who's done assessments in the past, that maybe are more than $10,000.
Good. And FEMA has given mixed signals
Very much so.
from the very beginning. They have gone through, I think we're on their 6th designated point person for Waitsfield.
Sounds about right.
That's about right, yeah.
And at one point, they were very optimistic, and then they weren't optimistic, and then you were
Right.
very optimistic with you again.
Yeah,
And then they
it
weren't.
goes back and forth depending on who our person is. So I think there'll be more information to come. I think, Brian, like, we don't wanna keep spinning our wheels, and so I think we're hopefully at the point that we can really start we have enough information that there's some traction, I hope.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think, Alice, to the extent that you can keep CVRPC focused on it, that's really great.
Yes.
Really helpful. But we ought to look into alternatives for an engineering assessment, not a design.
No, I agree.
One thing I will tell you about FEMA, from Christy Nome, is there is in the works closing the Northeast FEMA office and just having an East Coast office. That's gonna be one of the reorg and cuts. So FEMA, you've gotta be able to be an owl, like either a real owl or the owl on the table there, trying to follow what's what every day.
So we should
Yeah.
keep moving, there's no action items on tonight, but meeting with V-Trans is probably the key at this point.
Yeah, I'll just keep pushing it, and I think I'm making, if not with Michelle, I'm making some headway with a couple other people that work under Michelle, and I think it's promising, but just building new relationships. And then I'll say that Alice and I have started a conversation just for a type of mini, like, short-term committee to just say, what can we do, just so we have a maintenance plan, and if that's okay, I'd just, maybe move forward with just getting Josh and Charlie together and just say, when we get these inspection reports, what's our plan? And if they have a plan, then that's
Yeah,
good.
I did talk to Josh about it today, he did not want to hear about it.
No, now is not the time. Now is not the time. So, but at any rate, that's just, in the future.
I will tell you that any town that has a maintenance plan for its bridges is more apt to get grants more easily. And every one of those inspection reports, even though you might get a satisfactory or a good rating, always has in it items that are either, next time we come, we'd like to see this fixed, or we'd like to see you have maintenance and do this to the bridge. We really look for that, and York and I are talking about putting together a contingency, putting together a bridge maintenance plan for the town, so we don't wind up in a Meadow Road situation again. And I have Keith Cubbin is willing to be on that committee to help us.
Let's focus on the Meadow Road now and just make sure that everybody knows that it is a priority for the town and we're gonna have to be dealing with it in the near term.
That's great.
So,
Yeah,
Thanks.
I'm also looking into supporting the farmers that use that, as bridges become critical. And one of the things I can see, if there's an angle for some funding somewhere that could be an agricultural farming support type thing.
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, but I think the most important thing to do is get the bridge back up to snuff.
Yeah, and so that would be, and I just, this is your meeting, Brian, but Kelly showed up and she wanted to speak, but public forum's over, but she's on Zoom now, so I'll just point out that she's here.
Thanks. So thank you, Alice. Let's move on to item B. Hi, Kelly, can you wait a few minutes so we can deal with a couple of the agenda items? You okay? You're muted.
I'm muted, sorry. Yeah, absolutely. York, I'm sorry. I just saw the easement at the kind of toward the end of the, your meeting. So I thought that's what I was there for. I wasn't sure I was supposed to.
Oh, okay, no, it's okay.
No, that's what you're there for, that's what I think.
That is what you're here for, I think, and,
Oh, okay, yeah.
and at any rate.
And I
there's-
just like to hear. I like to hear what else you guys got going on.
Yeah.
It's very good. Okay, thanks, guys. I'll mute myself.
So next item is Conservation Commission, 2 items. We've got the Scrag Mountain Trail RFP and Conservation District contract. Kurt?
Hi, folks. Hey, how are you? Good, good. 2 items this evening. One, as you know, for Scrag Mountain, we have a plan for 3 phases of trail development. We completed the first phase, and now we're turning our attention to the second phase, which will take the first phase trail up about a mile, kind of a winding, looping trail, up to kind of below the Beaver Complex area. So the Conservation Commission has been planning that, and to help with our planning, we want to get a good price from a good contractor. So we've put this RFP together with York's help. And I think once we have the cost in mind, then we can start thinking about the financing of it. And we would be back to you, of course, with any recommendation once we have the RFP and the cost estimate, contractor, and then we can look at the financing.
I asked you the other day what you guys had in mind. And, one thing we've talked about, I'm not sure how high a priority is, I'd like to do it before next town meeting, is we have a bunch of reserve funds that date back pretty far. We've got a couple for town forest, for Scrag Mountain.
We do.
And kind of figuring out where those fit and whether we should go to the voters with kind of a consolidation and pull some things together.
Yeah.
So, but the assumption is in one of those funds or through grants, we probably have the funding.
Yes. Yeah, we did apply for funding from the state. We were not successful. The application was rated highly. Gail helped with it. But there was 10 times the request for the available money, so that was too bad, but.
Any questions, or? The trail work, the first phase, was really well done.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it was a good job, yeah.
It's an awesome trail. I haven't done it since.
You did the new
this-
one? You did the new one?
I don't know, what did I do in the snow? One of the snow.
You never did the old one.
Oh, yeah, so I should have the new one.
So then, yes.
Right.
The new one is a lot easier on your uphill muscles.
You didn't
for
go
sure.
straight up?
It felt pretty steep, my glutes were feeling
It
it.
was
Well,
pretty,
maybe you
but it
didn't.
wasn't.
Maybe you didn't find the
I'll
new
go with you.
trail.
I'll show you the new trail.
At any rate, in terms of the RFP, it was really good. The only things I added was just making sure that the language was there legally for a bidding process, and I think it's a great RFP. So,
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? And then the second item is the,
Yes, you want to explain this, Gail?
Well, go ahead, you probably.
Geo-
The
Geofence?
geofencing?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes,
Mhm,
okay.
mhm.
So with Kurt's help, I had applied for funding to get 14 collars for the goats that are working on the knotweed along the river. And although we were successful, we found out after we became successful that the group expects us to purchase the collars at the end of the summer, if they work. So we're going to,
And if we want them.
and if we want them, right, they will hopefully work, but if we decide we want them. And the cost was, and that's why, 3,400? No,
1,894.
Yeah.
yeah. So if they're really invaluable and really make the work run more smoothly, I would help to do a fundraiser like we're doing now for the goat. It's really important for us to continue the goat project, I think, for the next 3 years after this one, because we have a 5-year, according to a lot of data, the goats can eradicate the knotweed in 5 years. So we'd love to see that, and, but this is part of the data collection. So the collars would make it easier. However, if they don't work as planned, or if we find it's problematic coming up with that money, then we'll send them back to the group, Agritech.
A couple other points I'd raise. One, this was prepared by Agritech, and it's an agreement between Agritech and the Conservation Commission. I think that needs to be changed to the town of Waitsfield, obviously, because we were not authorized to enter into agreements, I think, with outside organizations. And secondly, if they did work, and we really wanted to keep them, I'd go back to the Lintelak Foundation. So that's where the money came from for this, and Craig Lintelak is very interested in invasive species management and using this technology to make it more efficient. So that might be another funding source. I would not expect to come back to ask the town
okay.
for these funds.
So that's where you're not at, so, and I should have said, so you're looking for our approval to authorize town administrator to sign the contract, knowing that there's no obligation to spend town monies.
Right,
Correct.
that's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And I should have, I guess, we should have taken action to authorize you to go ahead with the RFP for the trails too. So, I forgot to do that. So,
Yeah, well, that's a question going forward. Do you want us to come forward with RFP requests? Or are you okay if we think we want one, we go do it, and then if we want to actually enter into a contract, come back to you at that point?
You know, I'm comfortable with you guys moving ahead with an RFP as long as you follow our procurement standards and we sign the contract and approve
Right.
the money. I don't know what other folks think. I thought we should have probably put it on the consent agenda.
Okay. No, I think that's fine. I was just trying to,
No, I know.
but moving forward, what you're saying is you're okay with whatever commission is working on RFP with me, make sure the RFP is up to our procurement policy, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, unless there's some red flag.
Well, sure.
This is
Okay.
this is an ongoing, I mean, we approved the Scrag management plan 4 years ago, and we've done phase one already, anticipating phase two is coming forward, so this is not a surprise to anybody, it shouldn't be.
Okay,
So,
but yeah, and clearly the
A
select
new,
board has to
a
approve.
new initiative might
Okay,
be appropriate to come back to the select board.
no, that's helpful, okay.
So can we have a motion on the RFP?
I would so move that we adopt, or that we approve the RFP.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And now with the Agritech contract changed to be with the town, authorize the town administrator to sign it?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt. Jeff.
If we're going to do, next item is wastewater. Dory, are you here for the marathon? So you're the festival permit or the event permit is on our consent agenda. We're not going to discuss it. We didn't pull it off. It all looked good to us, so
Oh, okay, so I
we're
don't
going to
have
go
to-
ahead. Unless you have any news for us,
No,
sorry.
I have news. The book, like you might have heard, National Geographic published a book, did a worldwide search, and we were chosen for the smallest one. It's the worldwide search. It's
Oh,
like-
wow.
In the book, we're right behind the London Marathon. So it's London, China, it's Paris, it's all the big guys, as you can see, but we're in it.
Nice.
Wow.
So I thought the town should have a copy.
Oh.
That's great.
I brought you a copy, and you can see right behind the London Marathon, beautiful pictures,
That's
Wow.
and our registration is up 54%.
Wow.
Wow.
So we're getting a lot of attention worldwide.
So, yeah, so I'm glad I thought about this, so you don't have to sit through the rest of
I
the
had to
meeting.
talk
unless you
to
want
Josh and everybody.
But,
So here's a copy
That's
for
very exciting, thank
the
you.
town.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And thank you, and I just have one question. The road, was
Yes.
heard you're gonna fix it, and do you have any clout with Cross Point in the shopping center? You're laughing.
Sorry, I did not laugh, strike that.
Okay.
We have,
Sorry.
in several different ways, reached out to Cross Point, letting them know that we're gonna be paving the slow road, and it's an opportunity for them to tag on to us, and we have heard crickets from them. Just today, we understand there's a buyer that's in the works, and the property was recently subdivided from Shaw's to make it possible for the shopping center portion to transfer ownership.
Okay.
And my understanding is it's gonna transfer as soon as the waiting period for that subdivision appeal process is over. And York and JB and I talked about reaching out to the likely new owner to let them know this deal's available. Because, what's the schedule for,
I don't know.
no, for
It's-
East Four Road? You talked to Pike, and definitely by the 4th of, by July.
Oh, yeah, everything should be done early June. However, I don't know if the flooding event changed anything.
You know, it looked like they didn't get hurt, that didn't get hit very hard. They were working on it today, repairing
East
some
Warren
little bit of
spot?
stuff. What's that?
The East Warren spot that caved in? There's
Oh,
one
no.
spot in East
No,
Warren that
there's-
caved in, for
yeah.
I just
example.
kinda think that's hopefully as part of the reconstruction. We'll see.
You mean the one right at the top of the dip?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a definite cavement.
Drive by that every day.
Yeah.
What was going on? Well, let's talk about that during
I
flooding.
talked about, well, what I was gonna do is, cause I touched bases with John Huber, I insure you guys and everybody, and I got in touch with John Hoover, who now owns it, and I was gonna tell him it's dangerous for our runners, and if he could fix it before it's a wreck.
It's a wrap.
I mean, it's just horrible, and it's tripping, and it's gonna be bad, but anyway.
There's
And
been-
it's a liability for them also, so maybe
Yeah.
that there's an incentive for them to.
Yeah.
We've reached out to them via email, calls, and official letters.
Who do you talk to?
We send it to Cross Point.
Okay, because I have John Huber's number.
I'll take it.
All right, I will send everything to you.
I think that's part of the challenge too, though, is that they're at this point
Yeah.
they're at a
So-
point of changing hands, and so
Who
it's
do you
kind of
know,
a hot
do you know
potato.
who's buying it?
I do not offhand, I also don't know if that's,
Yeah, I don't,
Public or
yeah, I
not?
don't know if it's
I don't
public.
know.
I don't know the name though.
I don't remember the name either.
Okay, I'll try to find out.
okay.
Okay, yeah, because
I think
I got in
JB,
touch with them
think-
years ago, and they were just starting, so I used to deal with the owner originally, and so that's why. So, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is somebody raising your hand?
I don't know.
Raise
No,
your
a
hand.
cat keeps jumping up.
Oh, no, but it thinks that you're,
Who's Waitsfield town staff? Is
that
That's
would be.
Anne Marie.
Oh, it's Anne Marie. Oh,
I think she was running
So you
General Wayhouse meeting this afternoon, and so my guess is
Okay.
she's just on her account.
So we're good?
Yeah, so I mean,
It's on
it's on the consent agenda because it's a well-run event. You
Thank you.
crossed all the Ts, everything was good.
I have an amazing team,
Yes.
amazing team of people. It's
Congratulations
so cool.
again, that's really exciting.
Huh?
It's wicked
Congrats
awesome.
again,
That
that's really
was-
exciting.
That was stunning, and everybody's just going, we don't have as many pictures as some of the big races. You're talking London, Paris, China, I mean, you probably don't know them, but it's, so in the running world, people do all 50 states, they do for the half, for the full, for 5Ks, 10Ks, and so someone's talking about starting to do the 100 runs. So that'll take years, but, and then we added the 5K, 10K, so we have a lot more local people and Vermonters, families coming.
It's
So
amazing.
that's really helped. So we have to get on the finish line really quickly because they come in a quick time, but it's nice. And I have a lot of kids whose parents do the run and they help me at the finish line until the parents come in, so.
That's great.
So it's a real community event, so I think that's how we got in there.
How many years has it been?
14th year.
14.
We skipped 2020. Then we had a small one in 2021. We moved the date to September because we weren't sure about the July, the COVID thing, so. So we're excited. I don't know what the number's gonna be in the end, so, but we ordered our medals.
That's
There
awesome.
you go.
Thanks.
Well, I can't wait.
Okay, thank you guys.
That's awesome.
Thank
So,
you.
sorry, everybody about that, I just wanted, it just occurred to me that
Yeah.
she was gonna wait for nothing.
Yeah.
Thank you, I get to go eat?
Yep.
Thanks.
Please do.
Josh, wastewater update.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Josh.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I wanted to provide a quick update and then answer any questions folks may have. So first and foremost, I'm continuing to serve through the Matter Valley Planning District as the project coordination team lead for this project. Working with a team of people, including York, J.B. Weir, Bob Cook, Chach Curtis, and our project engineer, John Ashley from Du Bois and King. I submitted in advance of this meeting a fairly detailed project update. There's a lot of things going around, and I wanted to make sure that folks know what's happening, and try to provide a little bit of context as well as detail where appropriate. I also included in the version that's in the packet is an attachment that has a grant application that we put in the narrative for that, so that provides broader context about the sort of why of the project and other details. This is the 12th project update that I've been able to provide to the select board since I came on board in this capacity in the spring of 2023. All of them, including the most recent one, are up on the town's website, and the Community Wastewater Project section of the town's website, and it's linked on the front page. So if folks want to get more info, obviously it's in the packet, but it's also separately there. Quick overview of the project, just like that broader context, because I think it's important to remember the big picture before we get into details. The Waitsfield Community Wastewater Project has a service area being designed to serve Irisville and Waitsfield Village. The design includes 5 pump stations and holding tanks with an effluent force main within the Vermont 100 right-of-way between Irisville and the Munn site on Kingsbury Road. At that location is tertiary treatment and in-ground disposal, and it's sized at 95,000 gallons per day of treatment. Approximately 2/3 of that capacity is identified for what's identified as priority parcels, and then those with environmental or public health challenges, and approximately 1/3 of the capacity roundabout for new connections. So what's the status? What's brought us here, which I want to point to first, so before status. The previous work from feasibility, preliminary engineering report, and the first 30% or so of the final design was completed between 2022 and 2024. All, the first couple of those were funded through, or actually all those were funded through Clean Water State Revolving Fund, fully forgivable loans at no direct cost to the municipality. And currently, the project is in final design. That final design is being funded through a ARPA Village Water and Wastewater Initiative grant. So it's ARPA money that the state received, and they've identified communities that that they're supporting, and the town has received 2.5 and a little bit more grant that was signed or sort of approved last fall. And about 500,000 of that is going towards the final design to bring the project to bid documents. So where are we right now? Where we are is that the project is at 60% design. The 60% design plans were just completed a couple of days ago. They're also up on the website on that page that I mentioned. And the 60% designs incorporate field work from this past fall. There was a fair amount of field work that was done looking at archaeology, looking at wetlands, a variety of looking at archaeology. And that's been included in the design. It's also, there's been a good number of conversations with the different permitting organizations, specifically Division of Historic Preservation, Archaeology, V-Trans for right-of-way. And so there's been a good back and forth with the 30% design, and now that work's incorporated in the 60% design. But it also means that these 60% design drawings have been submitted for review by those parties. So Vermont DEC, Division of Historic Preservation, and V-Trans are all reviewing the plans that were just completed, which is great. And that feedback that comes from that, hoping about a 30-day review period, will anticipate some dialogue and back and forth with those permitting agencies to sort of figure out those details. A handful of other things that have moved forward in the design and in the discussions of the project. One, a pre-selection process for a sequencing batch reactor, so an SBR pre-selection process. The SBR is the identified treatment technology, and it was determined that selecting a specific manufacturer early in the design process would be beneficial to the project because each have their own approach, and it would reduce uncertainty and dial in the project costs on the earlier side. And so it isn't awarding a contract. There's an exchange of funding, but it's identifying the vendor, assuming the project continues. So there was an initial announcement of that, and we didn't get any qualified bids, and some of that were technical issues, and so that was done in sort of March, April timeframe, so it's being reposted this May and June, and fully anticipate getting qualified bids this time around. The second is the project collaborating with the MRV Active Transportation Corridor. The Vermont 100 or Matter Valley Active Transportation Corridor scoping study, which is currently moving forward, and actually draft was just, I think, completed on Friday, or a draft of it, and working to look at the opportunities for co-location of the path where the force main would be in certain sections within the Vermont 100 right-of-way. So we've had discussions between the engineer for the wastewater project and the engineer for the active transportation corridor, and identifying sort of what are the needs, what are the sort of accommodations for the path, what are the permitting considerations, what are the costs, and so that's being explored right now. We had a great meeting 2 weeks ago on this, and another one coming up in another week. Irisville master planning is moving forward and considering development scenarios and potential wastewater allocation opportunities for that project, so that's being considered. And then the last sort of thing on this recent efforts I wanted to mention is easements. So as I mentioned, there's 5 pump stations. One of those pump stations would be located on school/town of Waitsfield land between General Wade House and the elementary school, and 4 others on private property. And we've had great discussions with each property owner, and they've gone overwhelmingly positive. And from those discussions, the 60% designs incorporate those where the discussions are with those projects. So the current design drawings include detail about each of those pump stations. So we anticipate sometime in the not too far future to have some easement recommendations to the select board of here are the different locations and these are the final considerations and the interests for an easement. There's also all users of the project that are connected to the project also require easements, and that's also required before final design is completed. And that's because the project connects all the way to people's homes, and so it goes over private property. We've already reached out specifically to the priority parcel owners, of which I believe it's 111 property owners, and approximately 90% signed non-binding agreements and support for the project and interest in signing on. So we anticipate that to continue moving forward, but that's another step that would be taking place in the fall. JB Weir has started the process of drafting easement language, and so we're at the front end of that piece of the puzzle. And then on the funding side, like I said, all the engineering, planning, and design has been paid for through Vermont A&R at no direct cost of the town. The positive bond vote from last June 10th was required to seek construction funding, and that's where we are deep into that process. So in addition to the $2.5 million that was received from the Village Water Wastewater Initiative through A&R, and for which $500,000 or so is being used for final design, the town was just notified about a month ago that that it's receiving or has been identified to receive another $1 million from that grant fund. Essentially, that program had a variety of communities, and not all the communities are moving forward. So they had some trickle down or money that came back in that they are sending back out. So Waitsfield now is at $3.5 million in total funding from that program, which is great. There are 2 funding requests that are currently out, Vermont Community Development Program, which is HUD money, and Northern Border Regional Commission Catalyst Grant Program. Each of those are $1 million requests, and will receive notice on the status in June. One's in early June, the other's in late June. And then the largest funder for the project is USDA Rural Development, and anticipating a grant and loan package from them in June. We're deep in conversations with them and sort of options for funding, and we're making progress. There has been a fair amount of turnover on the staff side. We're on our 4th representative from USDA Rural Development since mid-January, but the project has, our application, we've met all the criteria of all the submittals, and it's currently being reviewed at the federal office, which is great. So going forward, funding's coming into focus in June, and anticipate soon thereafter a all funders meeting to sort of bring all those different parties together and say, okay, this is where we're at. How do we do this together? Second, once we have that work done and that's in focus, there's a variety of items that are going to require discussion and ultimately decisions from the select board. Things like prioritization, what that remaining third of new connections are, and that type of information will go into an ordinance ultimately, but sort of exploring what the different options are and identifying a direction. The easement piece, as I said, between pump stations and connections, and any other decision points that we hear back from the Design 60 status of the project as we move towards 90% design. And I believe it was your last meeting where the select board approved a sort of amendment of the timeline, and that had to do with an engineering services agreement with DEC, which lays out the timeline. So I think January 30th is identified as when final design would be completed.
And I'll just jump in just for a second and
Yeah.
say, they attended DEC to their main representatives, our last committee meeting. Was that last Wednesday?
Last Wednesday. Yeah.
They basically said, yes, that was approved, which was great. But I just want to say that they, and many others, but they were like, you guys have it together as well as anyone we've ever seen. I mean, first of all, I just really want to say that's thanks to Josh, mostly, and the board of the planning district. But they're like, I'm not sure they necessarily give out these kudos as often, like it felt really remarkable. Like they were like, you guys are remarkable. And then we had a meeting with USDA last week, and she said the same thing. And so I just want to say that the hard work of the town and the committee is definitely being recognized. And I just thank Josh and those on the committee that have done that.
I'm sorry, final design is due when?
January 2025, 2026.
January 30th,
Right.
2026.
Thank you.
I knew what you
Yeah.
Any other
weird.
questions or thoughts? I don't know, I just had a one-on-one sit down with Josh and JB in York to really try to make sure I understood the funding, and it seems as though we're gonna have a much better informed discussion late
In
June, early July
Yeah.
than we're able to now, because we'll have a lot more of the picture will be clear.
Yep.
And one of the things that came out of that meeting is we really need to start understanding how much it's gonna cost to operate this thing and what the impact on ratepayers is gonna be, depending on different scenarios.
Exactly.
And Josh sent out an email today, I mean, really working, like that's one of the top agenda items right now, is figuring out how much it's gonna cost to operate. So then we can figure out the rest of the numbers, because that's an important number.
Yeah, and that's part of the dialogue with USDA Rural Development and so on and so forth. So yeah, we are currently working on that very thing. But you're right. Funding coming into the construction funding coming into focus. I mean, it's great that the town has essentially nearly $3 million in seed construction money through the Village Water Wastewater Initiative, ARPA funding through the state, which is fantastic. And that's a really great place to start from. And we'll know more about the other pieces of that puzzle here by the end of June.
And I assume operations cost is also a component of the SBR discussions?
Yes.
Assuming that there are differences between those systems?
Exactly, and that was part of the hope was to have that information by April, so we would know what understand that part of the cost, and then that would flow in, and so we're a little bit, we'll have that information in June, along with all the other.
So June's gonna be a really hopping month,
Yeah,
is what it sounds like.
exactly.
Don't go anywhere.
Yeah, and again, I think the real point of this is because I think the public really wants to know, and Josh wants to share, and the select board needs to know, but to say a funders meeting is gonna be on the horizon, and maybe whatever the board chooses, some type of, whether it's just a normal select board meeting or a workshop, will be right on its heels, and,
Yeah,
so just, if you have any questions or anything, let any of us know, JB, Josh, or I.
yeah.
And we're working a lot on it. And it's been good work.
It's been good work, it's been a lot of work, I think, acknowledging that it's been a lot of work is also important. Thank you for doing
Yeah.
a lot of work.
Well, usually the good things are hard, right? At least that's what I was told as a kid. Makes me feel better about it. Anything else?
Unless there's anything specific that you want from us, like.
No,
as a
I
board.
mean, yeah, I like, it's a lot of work writing up these updates, but I appreciate doing them, because when I was writing this, I was looking at previous ones, of which there are, like I said, 12 or 13 of them that have been completed. And so it's just great to have a record of where we are in the process, and just want to make sure folks know sometimes folks will say to me, so that project moving forward, there's no money anymore, right? And that's not true, right? There is funding, and the things that we've been able to control, which is understanding what our needs are, working through the design and working within the system, that's all going really, really well. There are things that we can't control, which is a larger federal funding landscape, and we're doing our best to understand that. We're very much moving forward.
And that's in flux too, so
Right.
it's hard to,
Yeah,
Yeah, and I'd encourage you to read the report. I don't know, do you change anything from my part I sent you?
no.
So that part is literally almost, I think verbatim of the CDBG, the VCDP narrative for that grant.
Yeah, that was
And
the
so it gives
attachment.
you, it's the second part of what Josh sent out that's in the meeting packet. And it really is kind of cool just to show you like, what is this project? Why is it important? And so if you have any questions after reading that, let us know also.
Yeah. Great.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks all.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you.
Next item is General Weight House, and there's several sub-items. So a couple of comments beforehand. Two things. One, there's a lot of issues, and there's kind of occasional tensions around the Weight House, but I want to take a step back to where we were 2 years ago. when the town hadn't really paid any attention to the White House for several years, there was a lot of deferred maintenance. Fred was an advocate for forming a White House commission. We did that, who has done a lot of heavy lifting as we try to struggle with some of the deferred maintenance activities. One thing that always appears kind of to me is we have two goals for the White House. We have historic preservation and celebrating the town's founder, but also making it a living resource for the community, and that it function as a community space and a community provides support for our community service organizations. And sometimes that comes into tension, but I think it's a healthy tension, and I think we've been kind of navigating that pretty well. Another thing I wanted to just say, and this relates to the first item on the agenda, is I am on the board of the Friends of the Mad River. The Friends of the Mad River is one of the organizations that is sharing the cost of leasing this connector space. I have, and I've expressed in the past, some concerns about what I think is an unfair rent structure for that space, but I don't have a personal financial interest or an interest in any family or business, which is, I think, looking at our new conflict of interest policy is kind of the bottom line. On the other hand, if there's a perceived conflict of interest, I should recuse myself. So I want to just kind of not sure how to proceed. If anybody has any objections to my continuing to be, take part in those discussions about rent as it affects an organization that I've actually been on the board of for 31 years. I was 9. It's an awkward thing it's a small town.
I have no
I
complaints.
don't have an objection.
Nor do I.
Well, I guess I'd also say, Fred, you're an officer of another tenant.
Historical Society.
The Historical Society, so I guess we're plenty to go around. Okay, I did want to raise that issue that we initially, it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, is we wanted to discourage use of that common space, so we made really a penalty rental structure for using it. And I think my sense is that the board has shifted to say, no, this is actually, the Path Association and the Friends have cleaned up the space, they're using it efficiently and effectively, and that we should be, it seems charging $1.50 a square foot for that space while we're charging $1.25 for internal office space makes no sense to me, and I just think it's punitive.
I think it's a matter of what the goal is. Like, if the goal is to get folks to move out of a space because we don't want them to use it, then it makes sense. If the goal is for them to use it in a way that is sanctioned, then I think it's an entirely different conversation. And it seems as if, and I can't speak for everybody, but it seems as if the space is being used in a productive way by multiple parties. But I also know that, are there different sentiments about that?
Well, that space was a mess. It
Yes.
was horrible. Garbage, debris was pouring out onto the lawn at one point. That isn't the case anymore. I would have no problems with going to a rate structure equal to what the office spaces are.
Even though it's unheated
It's
space?
a valuable, everybody's fighting over it, so it must be valuable.
Well, I don't think everybody's fighting over to use it. They're fighting over how it's used and whether it should be used as intensively as it is.
I'll just speak for Anne Marie, who's, the
Anne
chair.
Marie can speak.
Or Anne Marie,
Or
do you want to
or
speak
let her
to?
speak for
Yeah.
herself.
Do you want to speak to what your point of the connector space was moving forward?
Well, the amount per square foot for the connector space did not come from the commission. It came from the select board, and specifically, it came from Christine. And it's my understanding that it was in an effort to discourage the use. So I'm not opposed to lowering it to the same price per square foot as the rest, or even lower. I support whatever is the decision of the select board.
Yeah, sorry, Anne Marie had said, I think in a meeting previously, that as long as they know that the connector space may not be there forever. And then a
Correct.
time may
Yes.
come where the connector space has a different vision. And so that was your caveat that you have added in the past.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, because rent includes utilities, so I can't see.
Well, we just installed an outlet there so they could recharge their bikes.
I think that was, well, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Misha said originally the grant was gonna pay for the outlet. So-
No, but I think it's part of utilities.
Oh, that's right, you're right, yep, you're right,
Utilities,
yep, that's fair, thank you, sorry.
yeah.
I'll just, I think I mentioned before that Steve
And-
said to me that he's like, I didn't know what those were, I've used those shovels before. And so I just think it's kind of funny, he's like, oh, those aren't for us to use, Steve, the treasurer. And so apparently people in the community have used the tools.
The tools that are hanging in there.
The tools that are hanging in the,
Oh,
in the,
okay.
in the connector space.
Yeah.
Because I think Steve does some like property maintenance here and there.
I don't know
just
what he's
for-
used it for.
And the square footage. What, we weren't charged, what was the square footage? It was only like for a third of the connector space.
All I know is that Ira's email originally, because he was trying to work on his budget, Friends of the Mad River Valley. And he said, and I don't understand, and I didn't check into this, but he said it's for the whole space. It seems like they should just charge us for the wall, but that may have been wrong. He may
I'd have to
been
go back
incorrect.
and look at the lease, but I think we were charging a square footage that was like a third of it,
Well, that would be an important consideration.
because now they're using all of it.
Can I?
Sure, Judge.
So, in the last 17 years, I've spent more time in that building than my own home, probably, in my waking hours. Plain District being one of the tenants. I mean, it's also where the trash cans are, which is not specific to the particular tenant's use. It's part of the utility, of the larger cost there. But, yeah, there has been an effort to, and proof is in the pudding, of the work of cleaning that up and making it more usable. And I think it has definitely supported the efforts and the work of each of the organizations by having a cleaner space and having an organized space. And my understanding, and I might be wrong on this, but my understanding is that there was an intention at one point to have those tools to be a community lending program, and meeting a broader purpose than just the purpose of the actual organization, which is the Path Association, like, for instance. So, and as of right now, the only way that I utilize that space is, one of the bikes from that bike program is now parked there. And so, that's really the only use, that the Plain District is using there. But I do really applaud the effort to clean up that space and to make it greater, and make it usable and make it look presenting. I mean, I had always wondered if there should be like a movable door or something of that sort, because it was really unsightly, especially at the time of it being a visitor center. And it is a public space with public bathrooms that are open 24 hours. But I do think it's definitely presents a lot better, and, yeah, I mean, and I encourage, I think I don't understand penalizing tenants. I don't understand that, and I don't understand why that would be done for that space. If anything, I think encouraging the organizations to continue the good work that they're doing, to me, feels right. But bottom line is that space is in a much better place than it used to be. And honestly, I give Misha most of the credit as being the one who was just like, let's clean this up. And Sam and I had a couple cleanup days, and so did others, and yeah, we disposed of things.
The lease is 168 square feet. That must be most of it, 168. It's pretty shallow.
It should be,
That's more than a third.
I was just pulling that off my head.
Yeah. But 168 is what they're billed for.
Dave, do you have any thoughts?
I'm just listening. I was curious, you know, you said you don't think it should be penalized, but you think it should be fairly encouraged. If you have thoughts on what that looks like, you know, the same rental charge or less, or, you know,
Yeah.
what your opinion is, I guess I'd be curious.
I mean, I'm not holding all the things that you all
Yeah.
are, right? But, you know, in the past, that there was no cost for that space. It
Right.
also wasn't being used.
Yep.
Or it was being used, but more in a storage way than in a more useful way than it is now. I mean, from my perspective, I think not having a cost on it and it being shared space, meeting these larger public purpose, to me, that makes sense. But I'm also not balancing the cost of the building and all the things that you all are. And I know this was discussed also about the basement previously, and I think the basement is somewhat similar in the fact that it was an underutilized space. And I believe the lease, if my memory serves, is like each tenant can have one pallet's worth of space. And, you know, and there's like a workshop bench down there and so on and so forth. But, yeah, from my perspective, I think encouraging, you know, encouraging good use of that space, meeting the broader purpose, to me, seems like a rational reason not to charge. But, yeah.
And they did add, you know, the select board approved the canoe, you know, it's a free service, but those are also in the connector space. I don't know if he's done it yet, but they're gonna be hanging for free use for the community.
And so, just so I understand the other side, so with the revenue from that space is 168.
I can tell you exactly if you
Yeah,
want
that'd
to
be
know.
And part of it, I think, was that this was a space that was essentially a void.
Yeah.
And then it got cleaned up, and then it got used, and then there was a cost.
Yeah.
And that sort of order, I think, is part of the
Wow.
challenge, right? Like, if there was an expectation of, if it got cleaned up and got used, that there would be a cost. It's just the order of which things have transpired, I think, have added
Well,
to the
I
confusion.
think Anne Marie's characterized it right. I'm not sure whether Christine drove it or not, or who did, but I believe the thought was it was being used by tenants without permission in an unsightly way, and let's figure out a way to put an end to that. And I think maybe a better way would have been to go to the tenants and say, all right, this is a mess, what are we gonna do about this? How do we straighten it out? What are your vision, and figure something out? And we didn't do that. You know, we have been dealing with some big things with the White House. And not every, you know, some things have slipped through the fingers, but on the other hand, it's getting painted and it's getting a new roof. And it's getting handicapped
It's $126
access, and it's getting its first
each.
repairs, and
So
how long?
$252 for
So we're moving forward.
25 years.
Yeah,
We've talked more
A
about
month.
the White House in the last year than we have in the last 25
Yeah.
years.
Which I applaud the select board for doing that, because there has been a void of maintenance and attention. And as a tenant, you know, being the work with the commission and the changes that have happened to that building already in the last year and a half, and what's planned is really, really great. But as a tenant, there's many times where I would go into that building and the heat wouldn't be on. And then, who do I call? What is the process for when the alarm goes off and the power goes out, or there's these other issues? And so I think having a body where we can identify, hey, there's some challenges with the building, and being responsive, and having a structure set in place and the improvements happening, it's been a great positive move. So thank you, Select Board, for the time you put into it.
Well, I just want to commend really the General Way House Commission, who I think are really actively learning from the past and really actively engaging with the renters and forming, you know, a partnership, because I do think everyone believes in the mission of all the nonprofits that are in the General Way House. And, you know, and that's the first step, is saying, we know that you're doing work for our community. And I think building that relationship based on trust is, I'm seeing it every day. when, you know, Misha comes to me and talks to me with things that he's working on and things he wants to do. And I think that's really huge, to have that, to know that we can partner and work together. And that's only possible when we have that relationship based on trust. And that's really, I think the commission's really worked hard on that, and I applaud them.
So how do you want to move forward? Do you want to put any more information to look at what a rent reduction might look like?
So the primary users of the connector space is the Mad River Path and Friends of the Mad River.
They're the ones paying the rent.
That's right, they've split it 50-50.
Although, as Josh said, some of the other space is, you know, for all tenants.
So it's basically.
Waste disposal,
Waste
recycling.
disposal, yeah, but I mean,
Yeah,
of the
the
tenants.
tools, and
It's
and
those
even
two
there,
entities.
it's probably more Path than Friends, but I think historically, the Friends probably were a bigger part of the problem of storing stuff in there, doing a lot of river restoration work and having a bunch of metal junk and needing a place to put it.
Mhm, mhm.
I've got cables in these things called duck bills that you use to put stuff in, to anchor trees to riverbanks. I've got 2 boxes of them in my barn.
Fred, it's $126 per month per organization, so it's $252. Just to, that is what the cost is.
Yeah.
So, you know, maybe this is an issue we should kick to the commission
I-
and ask for a recommendation.
That would be appropriate.
Um,
That would be
'Cause
appropriate.
I frankly think going to the same rent as the interior space is too much. But I don't want to make a decision that blindsides the commission.
Yeah, no, that'd be appropriate.
Is that good with you, Anne Marie?
Yes, you know, like I said, the actual amount, I gave a suggestion for the rent per square foot, and I even recommended that for the first 6 months, the tenants have half of what the increase is. But it was the select board's decision to go with it to, you know, 100% starting January 1st. So I'm supportive of whatever is the suggestion from the select board, but we certainly can bring it up at the next General Weight House meeting, which is June 2nd, I think.
June 16th?
Yeah. June 2nd is the next General Weight House meeting. We'll have it on the agenda then.
And is everybody comfortable with some reduction?
I'm comfortable with that, and, you know, at our planning district steering committee meeting, we talked about community spaces and having that be kind of a north star of how we're looking at these spaces that are shared and collaboratively used, and so I think with an eye towards that,
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
But we do incur utilities, we do incur.
And so I'm saying
expenses.
balancing all of
We
that
do
with,
incur,
yes,
you know.
totally.
And one of the goals of the commission, one of the things we were tasked with, was trying to get the utilities to be paid for by the revenue generated.
Yep.
And so, you know, it's a balancing
Yeah,
act.
I
you know.
totally agree with the balancing act.
You know,
Another accomplishment of this board was we hadn't had leases in how many years? And we hadn't raised the rent in how many years?
At least 17.
Right, well, that's exactly.
At least 17 years for my organization. We did not sign a lease of the time I've been there until this past year.
Yeah, so the amount of
And no
progress,
rent
I wasn't on the
increase
select
either?
board, but it
No
seems
rent
huge to
increase
me,
for
the amount of
17
progress.
Yeah.
Well, and to be honest, like, I think from a tenant perspective of not increasing the rent over an extended period of time, and then it kind of coming all at one fell swoop. And I fully understand that there's a lot to balance, but from a tenant, it feels punitive, it could feel
It could feel
punitive.
punitive, yeah. I think
But
especially.
it could have been I'm
Oh,
sorry.
no, go ahead.
It could have been the market could have demanded more.
Yes.
I could,
Well, and
I could see it being from a number of different perspectives. I can understand how the lived experiences are significantly different. And I think with a goal of partnership and progress and growth potentially, or often being a little bit painful around the edges, I'm glad that we're having these conversations because I think it's important to do.
I only wanted to add that the cost per square foot was calculated based on direct expenses.
I'm sorry, what does that mean?
So in other words, we added up what is the monthly direct expense and divided it by square foot, and
Okay.
we just wanted enough to cover direct expenses,
Got it.
no profit or additional monies. Our intention for the money for repairs would be raised through fundraising.
And those direct expenses are trash and,
Utilities
Yeah.
and yeah.
Well,
my
there's also cleaning,
Gosh.
we pay a lot of money on cleaning. I mean, there are some direct expenses that is worthwhile taking a look at, and that is one of our jobs as a commission, is to say, hey, should we be spending so much money on housekeepers and there was a couple of other ones that we could work on, honestly.
Yeah, two things, Anne Marie, with regard to that. The public restrooms are a community facility, they're not a tenant facility. That was actually one of the original reasons to buy the building, was to have a public restroom, so that is definitely
Right.
town responsibility. My recollection, and this could be wrong, was that when we calculated kind of the bottom line of what rents would be sustainable and cover costs, we weren't anticipating the public space because we were putting this penalty-based rent on them to discourage people from using them. So I don't know that was an important part of the bottom line. But I want to look at the spreadsheet that we had.
Right, well, it's a business.
Yeah. But it's also,
I know.
okay, it's a community. Community on the business. So we're okay putting this in the next agenda, and commission will take the kind of desires of the board here tonight to lower the rent in a fair way to, and come up with some suggestions, maybe take a look at those numbers again.
I
Yeah.
think I'd make some suggestions on how we could also true up what sort of the rents are, like if they've, yeah, basically what that would look like. I don't know if I actually used my words well there. Essentially, if there's a decision that it should be a different amount, figuring out how to balance out rents moving forward so that it comes out even by the end of the calendar year.
yeah, or a different way to deal, or a slight modification to dealing with the direct expenses in a way that's not charging rent for that space, right? So, like, I'm not sure who pays the bills now and how that's allocated, but
Can I
I'll leave
just-
that to the commission.
Can I just, to clarify, are you saying, Anne Marie and Fred, and Brian, when you guys came up with how much you charge per square foot, that was based on what the cost of running the building is with heat and garbage and cleaning, et cetera, and those were used to
Exactly.
make the leases?
Yes.
Oh,
It-
Yes.
And if I can clarify, so are you saying that the tenants are paying for the cleaning and the electrical and heat for the bathrooms that are open to the public? Like, using that model?
Well,
I don't
I
think
mean,
so.
you're raising a good point. The cleaning is for the cleaning of the whole entire building. It's not just
It's
for
not the entire building. It's the public spaces.
It is for the whole building.
It's not for the
I
private
don't-
offices.
It's not for the offices, it's for the public spaces.
So it's for the
Exactly.
meeting
Accessible
room,
spaces.
yeah.
yeah, so that's my question,
The
like, what is being
kitchen.
considered?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be if they separated it out for the two public toilet rooms. That's a
Yeah.
question to ask.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that you do, I was just trying to clarify if the total costs were being paid for by the tenants, believe that means that the tenants are paying for that other space, just, because we were talking about
Yeah.
that, so I was just trying to understand.
Yeah,
I think so.
Because if there were no tenants, there would be no income,
Right.
and then that cost would be borne by the municipality.
yeah.
That's how-
So it sounds like the commission will discuss this at their next meeting. Is that?
Yeah. Yes.
That's great. That's,
And just, again, when I got on this board, the dominant conversation of the board was, how do we sell this building? You remember that, Doug?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of the reasons why I'm here.
Thank you
Fred's
for
like,
all-
not gonna happen. It's an awesome building. We're very fortunate to have it for the community, so.
So, okay, so we're moving on from that, we've got 2 issues with event funding requests. Anne Marie, would you like to kind of?
Yes, as of today, the commission has decided not to move forward. So there will be no request for the $700.
Okay, so the house
We-
tour is not happening this year, is that?
That's correct.
Oh, wow.
Yes, the Historical Society received a letter from Governor Phil Scott about having some event to celebrate the 250-year anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, which is next year. And so we thought we could combine this event with whatever the town decides to do for the celebration of the 250-year anniversary of 1776, the Declaration of Independence.
Okay. That's good, that's actually a relief, because I was concerned that our reserve funds, our capital reserve funds, you know, by statute, they're, you can have taxpayers put money into reserve and have it go through, you know, additional budget years for capital projects, but not for operations. So I felt uncomfortable going to the reserves with that.
Well, it's the reserves for the general
Well,
Wait House, not the reserves of the town.
Okay,
We
this is the
have
general weight
something like-
fund.
Yes,
Okay.
the general Wait Fund, that's what we were requesting it from,
I think it's,
not from the reserves of the town.
I think probably from the reserve that was from fundraising and like in the
Okay.
past.
Right. We have something like $70,000 in our general Wait House reserves, and that's what we were requesting it from.
I think last year there was like, I know over $40,000 donated.
There was a donation, but I'm not sure how we accounted for that.
Yeah,
So we'll figure it out.
I think
when
we
come to
probably
it.
should come up with new terminology just to make it clearer
Yeah.
what's what.
Yeah, we definitely need new terminology.
And we discussed it some last meeting that we had, how we're gonna set up the mechanics
I
of
read
all
the
of
minutes,
this.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I read the minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which,
Okay.
as I understand, is gonna take a year before we can actually implement.
Well, when we do the budget next year, if there's gonna be a big celebration, think about it.
Okay.
Okay, so, then, York, you, moving on to the next item. So, I'm sorry, so, I guess that the second item under the event request was discussion regarding allowing, alcohol consumption on public property. And while that might not, that's moot now because there's no longer gonna be an event, it does raise a question that I don't believe the town has a policy
I
for
don't
that.
think we do either, and I think it's probably worth adding to the policy discussion.
Yeah.
Jennifer seemed to think that there was one for here, for this building.
I've never heard of it or seen it, and
That's why we need, when we have policy decisions made, they need to be posted to
Yeah.
it. Obviously, when this one that we're speaking of now, it was made many, many years ago. But going forward, we need it posted so everybody can see it and we get a historical record of
yeah,
it.
if there was ever a policy.
If there is.
I'm not sure that Jennifer was certain of that.
No.
So,
But I think we
do.
should establish one.
So.
yeah, and that'll raise a discussion that we don't have to have tonight, is do we allow it? And we'll have that conversation.
we'll have that conversation later.
I could go either way.
At any rate, just real quick, Brian, and it's already getting late, but I did, if anyone wants to see it, I did put a packet together of the steps that we could take to make a policy. And I drafted a somewhat beginning policy for us to look at. So at any rate, it is legal. We can do it, towns do it, we just have to do it the appropriate way. And so when you're ready to, if, on the work plan, then we'll move forward with that when you're ready.
That's really great news. Thank you so much, York.
Yeah.
I mean, because if we do want to create more of a community event in the Wade House in the future, it would be really great to be able to do that. Have, even anniversary parties or whatever we want to hold in the barn. It would be great.
Yeah.
Not to mention fundraisers.
Yeah. And, yeah, we may want to treat the White House differently than the office. So
Yep.
that's up for discussion. Great, so the fourth item, or the third item, which relates to the fourth item, is this proposal from the Path Association to share the cost to install, I'll use the word permanent, but a shelf for a standing projector in the conference room. And York, you said this correspondence was received, but it didn't say who it was from. It was.
And no name on it.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize.
It was Anne Marie, right?
It was Anne Marie, but I don't think you wrote this, Anne Marie.
I thought she did.
What?
I thought it was an email.
The letter that you sent me, the email last week, at their last meeting on May 5th, the General White House Commission voted 3-1 to approve installation of a small triangular shaped.
Oh, yes. Mhm.
That was written by you?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think she
didn't
CC'd
include it.
Kathy Mahiron, but I think that she
And
wrote it.
So I included this because there was an interest to include it, and so there it is.
And then, so the Historical Society is advising the commission not to allow this to happen without certain safeguards, including determination about impact on its listing in the National Register, permission from the state historic preservation officer, and permission from the Historical Society. Yeah, I still go back to a flat screen on wheels is the future. I mentioned that to Misha, and he said, okay, we'll do that. So I don't know how alive this proposal still is. Have you had any
I
conversations?
talked to Misha today.
What did he say?
He just wants it to work. So that's why he's like, okay, TV's fine. I mean, to him, it doesn't matter. He has a problem, and a TV or a projector solves that problem. In terms of the historical, significance of the building, et cetera, I'll just say that Josh Schwartz, we had a meeting today about wastewater, and he brought it up, and he said, that is not the way the National Register works.
They
And
don't.
so I can't speak exactly, I don't know.
No, they're not worried about the interior to that extent. Fred, you and I had a conversation. You do feel as though that these are significant architectural features.
It's a really unique architectural feature, and to put screws in it and to do anything to that beam seems really a shame. It's a very unique structure, the way they did that, and anything to, adding screws to it or anything would deface it, would, take away from the quality of what that thing is. It's rather unique what they did there.
So it sounds to me as if this is one of those instances that Brian was referencing earlier, where sort of community needs and historic preservation interests are sort of in tension with each other. I think, if I understand things correctly, the community need is to have some sort of AV resource that would facilitate making meetings easier in that space. And I think that there are multiple ways that could be accomplished, including a projector, but also including a number of other solutions, including a TV on a flat screen on wheels, which would not be a permanent fixture, for instance. So I think that there is a way for both sides of that tension to to be okay with a solution. I just don't know exactly what that looks like.
How about if we just ask the interested parties, ask Misha to think through what a non-permanent solution would look like? Something that's not a fixture.
Well, the non-permanent solution is the TV on wheels. I mean, that's the non-permanent solution.
Or a
but,
projector that they use now, but it's just a hassle for him to have to borrow it from Josh, set it up, and then break it down.
Yeah,
They do it now.
And
I
Is that
mean,
so
I
bad?
think,
is
I-
that so bad? I mean, it would be a mistake to try to think that the Wait House is a modern office building. It is not a modern office building. It's an old, mostly museum.
Well,
The idea of
it's-
having a
I don't know,
TV
Fred.
an
I
idea-
renovated a building in Montpelier that is on the National Register, it's in the Capitol Complex, and it's a modern office building that is totally in keeping with its historic
Is that what
character.
we want to do?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
The idea of having a roll-around TV that can be put out of the way when it's not being used, I don't have a problem with that.
well,
The
it's my
face-
understanding that this TV would fit in the kitchen.
yeah.
It could also be used for things like slideshows of digitized, slides of historic pictures that have been.
Well, we're installing one in the museum right now.
Oh, you are?
What, a TV?
It's
Who's we?
the Historical Society.
Okay.
And you're doing that because that's your rented space?
Yeah.
Just as though Josh could put up a TV on the wall of his office,
Oh, I'm not putting it on, we're not putting it on the wall.
wheeled, on wheels.
It's on a table, I just bought it this
Oh,
last
okay.
weekend. It's on a very old skinny table going up against the wall. And the intent is to have a electronic museum with, movies of Waitsfield and stuff like that.
So where are we going?
If,
I mean, it sounds like you all, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're okay with TV on rollers.
Yes.
And talked to Misha about it, we looked at some options, and if you just like, you can do it, then I'll just say, you can do it, and that will be that. Is that a fair synopsis of the conversation?
I think compromise and getting the best solution that is good for all parties is the way to go. Like if it costs a ton more to get a TV, I know it doesn't, versus put a screw in a thing, I think it should be considered which is better. But if it can be compromised to avoid that, that's fine with me.
I'm good with the TV thing. I'd be curious about the size though.
Yeah.
Let's,
I mean, I think it'll be smaller than this, and my guess is it's like a 50-something inch so that you could see it from the table.
But I do think that the key to this letter is the Waitsfield Historical Society to meet and vote not to allow this before certain things happen. And that, to me, I'm not sure that that's.
maybe that was an unfortunate choice.
I think that's outside the scope of
Yes.
their.
That's an unfortunate
Okay.
choice of words.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I'm wondering if commission and society, I don't know, but yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll just move on and
Yeah, that's fine
not
with me.
talk about projectors anymore for a while.
All right,
Okay.
So I think moving forward with something TV related.
Okay.
Yay.
Okay, crisis averted.
very good.
Kelly,
Woo!
you miss us?
That's really why she's here. She reached out, she goes, I really miss you guys, I'm joining the meeting.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Bye.
I miss you
I
guys.
say that you obviously have not been spending your spring in Vermont.
Say that again, Brian,
You
sorry.
obviously have not been spending springtime in Vermont.
Oh,
Where
yeah, definitely. It's nice down here. I'm coming home soon, tomorrow, next week.
So York, the easement, maybe. you
Well,
can-
I can just say that the easement, Kelly's dad, I think, right?
Yes.
Brought the easements
Yeah.
by, I think the language is very clear. Pocket Park is our responsibility, but so is the path along Kelly's property. I reached out to Josh and our road foreman, Rogers, and asked him if he can, when he has a chance, get some what's the name of the gravel? Stay mat.
Stay mat.
And
Stay mat.
drop some stay mat and, you know, bring it up to par, and that includes like the walkway into the pocket park where there's a leaf with a rock.
Well, let's, maybe back up a minute.
Okay.
So this issue came up because Pete and/or Kelly raised concerns that the area is not being maintained.
That's right. Yeah, sorry, I jumped in.
And then the question was, whose responsibility is it? I do think, just anecdotally, that the Sweet Spot did some maintenance over time, cleaned up the pocket park when it flooded. But I also think the town also installed it and had at times resurfaced it before, so I don't know. But
Yeah.
it's clearly from the
Yeah.
easement, it is a town responsibility.
Yeah, so, I mean, just a quick brief history. So I purchased the building in 2018. And every year, well, for several years, I was just like, let's just maintain the pocket park. I'll mulch it and weed it and kind of just maintain it. And then the stewardship and the Path Association has been so wonderful. Has Tom Spencer been in to talk to you guys?
Yeah, we
About
talk to them
their
every
efforts?
year, and we contribute to their effort, which is
Yeah.
great service to the valley.
Yeah, so he was really great. We did a great cleanup last year, and we weeded all the bricks and did a big cleanup, which was awesome. But every year it comes to play like, okay, so now because of those high waters, that path is just getting muddy and it's gross. So look, who's gonna maintain it? So I'm not necessarily here to just like complain, because there's been such awesome effort from everybody, but it's also what I'm here for is just to make a plan, because the select board changes and volunteers change. Rodney was once our guy, now Josh is, and everyone's like, I don't know, I don't do it, and it's kind of because I keep doing it, without a plan, and now it's getting to the point where there's a ton of silt like built up at the bottom of those stairs that were built at the pocket park, and we just put so much money, into that. It would just be really nice to kind of make a game plan to see who is responsible. And to be honest with you, I was like, okay, let me just start digging this up to make a game plan. And then my dad is in town, so I just asked him to drop this off for me. So that's kind of like a history, like a long story short.
I think it's really helpful. I mean, and it's on our work plan, or is on our working plan, to say what are our easements, what are our responsibilities, and make sure that we have a plan when select boards changes and town administrators change, et cetera, et cetera. And I did have a conversation with Josh, the foreman, also about Pocket Park, in terms of having a half day to go in there and clean up the silt, plant some grass seed, and bring it back to what it can be. It's flooded a few times.
Including
the
like
last few
this
years.
weekend. Didn't it, this weekend?
Well, it hit the
pocket
drive.
park must have.
The pocket, I think the trail looked like it maybe did the path, but not into the deck of the park,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah,
I was stopped at the bridge looking at it today, so I didn't go down there.
I looked at the camera at one point, and the water was really pretty high.
I think
Yeah, it hit the driveway. It didn't hit the actual like path that we're speaking of, but of course it flooded the pocket park.
Yeah.
And then there's that really, it was an intentional foundation line for the old barber shop, and that's like starting to get covered over. They've left that little like foundation piece in the pocket park.
Oh, that's right.
And that's just getting like flooded over with silt and stuff. So it's kind of just like a maintenance thing.
So we will figure out.
Yeah,
And even if, so maybe see about Stewart River
I
Valley,
think.
if Josh, when he gets his head out of the flood, maybe, or we have a contract line in the budget if we could get somebody, a property management firm,
That's
to go
fair.
in there for a couple of hours.
Yeah, I don't think, it's very
Josh.
small.
Josh, you're gonna be busy for the rest of the summer.
Well, that was the other thing I was gonna say. I could spearhead the work, and just get some financial support from the town if you guys want that. If I had like a budget or something like that. I mean, I looked at our parks budget, and we're only showing $6,000 for this year, which was a reduction from the past, but I don't know if that's because we have so much volunteer work.
It's because
far
we
as-
have a new line item for Stewart Mad River Valley, who are doing a lot of the work that we used to do under the park management line. So we
Yeah.
actually increased our spending, but we're doing it through them rather than contractors.
I mean, I'm happy to do whatever. I mean, maybe a really good step would be to reach out to Mad River Valley stewards.
Yeah.
And just have that conversation and see what they think would be best. I think if we can keep it off Josh's plate,
Yes.
so we're down a couple people right now, would be great. And if that includes bringing in volunteers and,
And spending some money on seed and mulch and whatnot, that's fine.
Yep.
So Kelly, you're back in town soon?
Yeah, I'll be home next week. And then just for the record, I think we're gonna, if you guys wanna like put that pocket park to kind of where it was originally, we're gonna need a mini excavator to get in there. I mean, Josh Schwartz and I were out there after one of the last floods last year, and it's deep as far as the silt goes. And then the only other thing I can think of is like working with volunteers. I love them, everybody, but I don't know. I feel like we might need somebody a little bit more that does the road work and
Yeah,
those kinda-
that's what I said today, I'm sorry, yeah, I suggested to York today that maybe it's like a Charlie Goodman Bobcat type of thing.
okay.
yeah. Our Jason Dunbar does a lot of
Yeah.
our grading work out back in that space.
Yeah, that would be good too, maybe,
Okay.
anybody.
All right,
Okay.
but I
And-
mean, yeah.
And Tom with the Path Association had reached out to me, and I just said that I was going to talk to you guys. So I mean, we can kind of go in a circle, but I don't know.
Well, if I write an email to Tom, I can include Kelly, Brian, if you'd like to be
Yeah,
included,
I'd like
and
to,
then,
yeah.
just so we're all on the same page, and I'd rather just get this to do it, and so make a plan to do it, and I'll talk to Steve, also our treasurer, and make sure we have a good understanding.
Okay,
Okay.
good.
Yeah, and again, like just to make a plan moving forward, I'm happy to like do what we need to do for this calendar year. I don't know. You know, I'm here to help support too. Every year it's like, who does what? And and I just had time to get on with you guys and figure this out, so that's why I'm here.
So it sounds like there's sort of a, right now, what needs to be done to restore it to its sort of original state, and then beyond that, trying to figure out what a annual maintenance looks like and having a plan in place for who
Yeah.
does what when. Is that an accurate?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that'd be great for everybody, you know?
Yeah, that was well put. Sounds
You know,
good.
Yeah.
when we went to a fourth road crew, one of the reasons for it was managing our public lands, that we bought that machine to do the mowing, so we used to have a half dozen contracts with different folks to mow at different polo field and LaRue swim hole, and now we do it in-house, and the idea was to make the road crew more of a public works management. And in fact, the position of the fourth road crew was road something,
Yeah,
public lands or something like that.
It has a totally different title.
Yeah, so this is consistent with that.
And I'll just say, we have officially offered Chad the job. Is that
We're gonna
okay?
go- Yeah.
Oh, you wanna do
no,
executive session?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
Yay! I don't know who that guy is, but that's awesome.
Sorry.
So, okay, we're good?
Does that address everything you're hoping for, Kelly?
Yeah, I think we're good, you know. Yeah, and I think just like moving forward with the bricks and that kind of stuff, knowing that the town's support and put effort into the stewardship. Is it the stewardship of funds? Is that what am I saying it right? Or the Path Association, like those guys came out and we weeded all those bricks last year and just cleaned up the street. And I guess like, I don't know, I think it's great that there's that support for Bridge Street, because, you know, the town accepted to put these bricks in and accepted the lamps and all this stuff, and it just gets really bad in the maintenance. You know, we just needed support, so. It sounds like giving those funds to that organization is, you know, cleaning things up, so that's a really good thing.
Yeah, so just so you know, it's Stewart MRV, Stewart Mountain River Valley, and
Stuart MRB, yeah.
we budgeted $8,000, which was their request this year. And Facein
Okay.
and Warren also contribute because they maintain parks in all three towns.
Yeah, yeah, I
Summer
see that.
maintenance.
Yeah, and they're doing incredible.
They're doing
It's
incredible.
amazing to have all those facilities all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane. The volunteers, I mean, I'm on the email list, it's just really cool.
And for example, the poop bags, the dog poop bags, they split with the Path Association, and those are $2,000 a year. That they got, you know,
Wow.
I mean, I was floored by that experience.
And people have a great habit of packaging it up and dropping it on the trail for somebody to pick up.
Taking care of it.
Taking them all the way, yeah.
That happens a lot.
I'll get it when I come back this way and just walk
Yeah.
right by.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Kelly.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, guys. Well, I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks.
Oh, and I concur with everything. You guys do a really good job.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah,
Bye.
so
Okay,
we
bye.
added just a flood recovery. It can be super brief. I told you two, Dave, Jason, one of our road crew guys, was hurt on Saturday. I'm not quite sure what happened. A portion of the road gave out under the equipment he was in, and it
On
sent
Butternut?
him. I'm not sure where. I think it was the common road, but it could have been. No, he wasn't working on Butternut.
I don't think it was Butternut.
I'm pretty sure it was the common road, but because it was Saturday too, and they didn't get to Butternut until Sunday morning, and it pushed him up, and his head hit against the ceiling, and he has a neck brace. There's some. It doesn't sound serious, but anything spinal is potentially serious. So he has to be in the brace for 2 weeks and can't work until the orthopedic folks give him the okay. Josh said at least 2 weeks, probably a month, but I'm not sure you really know. So, and then otherwise, we should, there was a great shout out in Front Porch Forum this
Yeah,
afternoon.
we should do something from us.
We should do something too. I'll draft something and send it around if you want.
Great, thanks.
Great.
Okay. And it's they were on top of, I was up on the common road and they got that fixed in no time.
It's amazing.
It was, but Butternut was a mess.
Yeah.
And Sherman Road was a mess.
It was.
Yes.
It was very surprising when I walked out of my house and
It
it
was-
just started flashing.
And I'm pretty sure that it was the last one to get opened. He was working up there this morning.
Yes, it was. Yeah, no, but, they were there on Saturday night at like 9:30 PM checking it out, and,
Yeah.
I could hear them. So
I also
they're
really
working really hard.
appreciated the emergency management response. We got lots of alerts. I knew what was going on at all times, so like that resource was really pretty
Yeah,
super.
VT alert,
Yeah.
yeah, and then, now I understand, I have Claire's number, and that's good, that we have that.
I'm sorry?
I have Claire's number now.
Okay.
and we have that kind of set up, so that's
Yeah,
good.
Claire did an amazing job, she did
Yeah.
really good.
So
And-
shout out to
and-
her as well, I
And
think.
Brian, really appreciate all your help.
And Fred had suggested, and I think it's a good idea, doing a little bit of a postpartum
Yep.
review of how things went. Josh is incredibly focused. He wants to get things done. He's not gonna leave until everything gets done. He doesn't like a lot of interruptions, and sometimes, communication is key during these events, so we have to figure that out.
Yeah, what is the optimal information flow to him when
Yeah.
it's roads?
Yeah.
To and fro.
Yep,
Yeah, and I think what can be frustrating is if you have 3 people reaching
That's-
out to him along with property owners,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, we need to come up with a system so he can do his job and yet we get informed. Yeah.
He did hire Kingsbury to work on Butternut Hill, because he was working on, the other two guys were working on Ralston Road and Sherman Road at the same time. And then because he lost Jason, he needed to hire somebody to help with material today for the Sherman Road, I think a little bit of Ralston. And I had said on Saturday when I talked to him, just, get whatever help you need.
And
Yep.
I think it's been pretty, I mean, not surprising, but definitely worth mentioning and awesome that, adjacent towns
Oh, yeah.
have been very clearly helping each other out. I think it would be great for us to be able to, in whatever way possible, help them then get potentially compensated
Yeah.
for that if possible,
There is a
which I
plan.
think,
Yeah,
and I know that
that-
there's a plan in place, so I wanna throw my support behind that, because
Yeah.
I think that's really important. I
Yeah.
love that we help each other out, and I think if we can do what we can to make sure that that's taken care of.
Yeah, well, last
effectively.
July, Warren had no damage, and they were helping us a lot in helping Facein. And since we had a lot less damage than Facein, our guys were up in Facein and North Facein for a lot of the post-flood. I heard that just Tucker Hill was the only thing that really got damaged, but I'm not sure about that in Facein. But Facein truck was going back and forth, as was Moortown's.
Yeah, but Sam from the planning district is working on researching, helping the towns
Yep.
figure out what we might need to do with MOUs
Well-
to make sure we can get reimbursed. Yeah.
Oh, reimbursed,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, the emergency management directors from all 4 towns have been working together. We're coming up with a plan where it's more of a valley-wide emergency management district. Without, so we're working more together as one, sharing resources, coming up with MOUs ahead of time and everything. So that when something does go down, it happens to 2 or 3 of the towns. It's just, and especially the command structure, how we're gonna organize all this valley-wide.
Yeah, and I'd also love maybe just a paragraph or a page to be able to send to people when there is a wider issue. So I can just say, look at this, and this is how you should report something, or,
We gotta come up with some protocols, yeah.
Yeah.
to tell regular people, this is what you do.
My understanding is that the planning district that working with the emergency management coordinators was the goal, to kind of figure out how to better coordinate.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
Butternut Hill, this is the second time that's washed out
Yeah.
in the last 5 years. Did it go wash out in Irene?
I don't remember.
I don't remember. Anyway,
Although, Irene, yeah, I don't remember, but Irene was a different kind of flood.
It was.
Slow and steady.
It was slow and steady, and it was the main stem, and this is like last summer, this was the, flashy streams,
flash floods.
upland streams, yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking it probably ought to go on our local hazard mitigation
Yeah.
plan and have a real study done and
Yeah,
see what we can do to mitigate this happening every 5 years.
yeah, no, that's a good point, because I'm not sure, there's not a big, I'm not that familiar with that area. It didn't look, it wasn't a big culvert, which maybe was part of the problem, but it was, it didn't look like that big of a stream, but it did a lot of damage,
Yeah, yeah, it comes off that side hill.
yeah.
Well, I assume, has Kingsbury put it in culvert yet? Have they gotten that far? I mean,
It-
Josh,
It blew out the road, not the culvert, and what I saw was they were backfilling the road.
I see. I mean,
But Josh is really good about if upgrading every chance he gets.
the 2 last summer were doubled in size.
Yes.
Literally,
Yeah.
which, like, when you look at them, you're like, those are really big.
The Sherman culvert that got filled up was 3 years old.
Oh, wow.
They hadn't done much up there in the last 10 years before that, and then they dug everything out, but it was just a lot. I think we got like a extreme microburst up there,
Yeah.
so.
But what really surprised me was the culvert in front of the round barn
Yeah.
failed, and, there was water running over the
Right.
East Warren Road.
Yep, saw those pictures.
It was strangely coincidental that there was a service for a Red River Valley Ambulance Service, longtime volunteer, at the Round Barn. And they walked out and there was a flood, so they all put on their yellow
Oh my
vests.
They all put on their vests
Oh
and
my goodness.
started doing their thing.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing.
So, okay, we've had some technical issues with the work plan, how do you wanna proceed?
So I spent time making a work plan. I shared it with Larissa last week on a Zoom. I think, yeah, you saw it.
Yeah, we
I
walked through it
invi-
together and.
Yep, I invited Steve at one point to invite him as part of the work plan, and he made an account. At any rate, this morning I could not log on, period. I'm like, Steve, he's like, it won't let me log on. And everything's saved. I logged on and off nonstop for over a week. So, and the company's not been very helpful. But if you like, I made a personal account, because I wasn't gonna make a new town admin account, because that could cause struggle. But this, I kind of thought it might be helpful just to kind of work through what it will look like. I did not add everything that I did all last week, but it gives an idea and see what you guys think, and then we can move forward with it.
And one thing
Go ahead,
that's a critical component of this particular interface, if you go to the three dots by main table, top left,
Yep.
you can do basically a shared view, which creates a link that is publicly viewable by any of us. So, I mean, it's view only, you can't edit, but that means that we have, once he does manage to get access to the account, we should be able to see,
You can see where it is at any point in time.
And anyone from the public can. And so, but not editable, so it can't get us in trouble either. Like if all of you could edit it, that maybe could get us in trouble, maybe, but this would
from an
mean
open meeting law
that no
perspective.
open meeting. So this would, so if you have changes or anything, I think Larissa and my goal would be, you could just be like, hey, can you add this, or, and then we can have it in our select board meetings. I think my goal will be to print it off next time.
But we're
so
gonna
we can
share
go
the points
through
of
it.
time with the public, right? It's not
Yep.
gonna be like,
Yep.
it's linked on our website.
So what it basically does, I basically took the Excel sheet, I did just a few of the rows of the Excel sheet. And I'll just go through one, for example, like town operations, this is directly from the Excel sheet that we all have from a few years ago. So review contracts, and then you can go to the comment, and then a comment can say, more information.
There's also like a sub.
And then right
task.
here, there's some items, so like town cleaning, and I mean that for like the town office, and that's just something on my radar that we should put that out for bid, because it hasn't been done in several years, just as best practice. We can put like an owner, like Steve was an owner for, the maintenance of the building, for example. Then you all can say what you want it to be labeled as a priority, and then what we're doing, we're stuck, we're working on it, and then if you want a due date, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's just really easy. And then we can have it, so the higher priority items are automatically on the top, I believe.
There are a bunch of different ways you can filter things, and this, I think, this version of it is the free version.
Yep.
So it would be at no cost to the town at this stage if for some reason we decided to scale up. They do have a subscription-based system as well, but I feel like especially as we're trying to figure out whether or not the system works
How many
for
users
you.
does this give?
It supports 2 active users and basically unlimited viewers through this public sharing feature. The paid version is $9 per seat per month with a minimum of 3 users. So basically it would be a minimum of $27 if we had more than just York and one other person.
But judging from the research I did and Larissa did, and then I happened to talk to my partner last week, and she doesn't like any of these, she loves Excel, but her staff uses Monday also, and they really like it. So, and it really was easy. It makes sense. It's a logical
The
system.
interface makes sense once you get access to it. I wanna see how this thing resolves with.
I'm
getting
downplaying my
access to it.
frustration from the day.
They're just, the site is down, or?
No,
or
they
your
say
path-
they say I don't have an account. So the most
Which is
recent thing
patently
is,
false.
thanks to Larissa, they were like, well, do you have the plan number? You see the address bar, it says 918, da 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 da. I luckily had sent that to myself, And so I copied that and sent it to them, so that should help them find the work I put in. But if this works for you, I can continue getting the other one back, and it's basically full, it has the whole Excel work plan on it.
Plus some additional sort of matters that people had sent or talked about that I just sort of smushed into a big
Yeah,
brain dump note and just sent over.
and I put all those things that Larissa had sent in the document, which is like a whole page of items.
And can users look at the comments on each items and the subtasks?
I haven't gotten to that level of
I
detail.
could probably
and
figure out
explore.
right now, but I won't.
Just my only question, not concern yet, but just how it works with assigning kind of things to all of us that are if we're all doing things and or taking subtasks or doing research on them, how does that work?
So I think the point at this stage is that we wouldn't have that ability.
Okay.
You would reach out to me.
It would be view only.
No, I know it would be
Oh,
view
okay.
only.
You would reach out to me.
But how would we
Oh, if we
Yeah.
wanted to do,
How would we get assigned that stuff? I know we would just be view only, but.
I think like during select board meetings would be my guess, is now and then quarterly, we'd go over it again and say, this is what we're gonna do.
Okay.
And then I would make notes and change it, and then anytime that anyone, wants to go in and say, hey, I think we need to add this to capital improvement as a sub item, I just go in and do it.
Okay, so it's more of a work plan for you that we, at meetings and occasionally outside of meetings, can
Yeah, I say
can
work
look
plan
at.
for town staff and us,
Yeah, okay.
and what our priorities. As, we all said we need to work on several of our policies. We should probably say
Yeah.
which ones in order, we want to
Yeah.
tackle.
And here's that, by the way. So here's the policy, and I just put a few that we had talked about.
So to have that workshop, how can you share this with us ahead of time, in this format? Or-
I can share it, so I can share this, like Larissa said, and she tested hers today. And I just share the view, and you open the
Okay.
link, and it looks exactly like this.
you could also export to Excel. You can create, there are a lot of output options to share it ahead of
Okay.
time.
So what's the advantage over Excel?
The interface is more intuitive for me, at least, to be able to
Yeah.
sort of collapse subtasks so that when you're looking at our work plan, if you just want to see sort of like the master umbrella categories, you're able to see those. If you want to break down into more granularity, you can. You're able to keep notes or documents, attachments, you can attach them there so it's all organized in one place. And that way, if there's an action item that we bring up in a meeting, it has a place to live so it doesn't get lost.
Yeah, and that's a good point, like if there's a file that goes along with something, like, let's say, for example, we're working on new ordinances and policies. This technically could have the old dog ordinance as a file, and I don't have file in this one, but I could add it really quickly, and that's also the cool thing, is you can add columns and rows really easily. So you can have the old one, have the new working document in there if you wanted, so it can be really open to the public, which I personally like for things that should be open to the public. I don't know,
So it
my
does-
point, we were trying to respond to the select board's request to make this more user-friendly, and this is what Larissa and I came up with.
Yeah, it does, Excel can probably do many of these things. I don't know that I have the ability to make that happen in a way that is user-friendly and is not just so visually overwhelming that because when I looked at that spreadsheet, I was just like, I just don't even know what to do with this information. So that's may just be a me problem. So I think
No, I'm just
especially
asking,
since this version is free at this stage, I feel like it's worth a try at least to see if it makes sense as a system for keeping track of things. I think there's often a tendency to be like, yes, we should X or Y, and then maybe it gets written down somewhere. But it'd be great if there was a somewhere that it gets put, and you could even build in a reminder so that it will be like, hey, have you checked on this? There's features that I think are probably beneficial.
Due dates, forcing action.
Timelines.
I like Excel too, but also you end up, and I think this happened with our old policies, you ended up with different versions.
Mhm.
And you kind of lost track of what's the
That's a
one, the
good
final
point.
one that we're working on. This is one, you know, it stays here, right?
It's online,
Yeah,
yeah.
so.
And actually, I was really frustrated today. I hope I got that across. Like, I had actually the app on my personal computer because I was working on it to share it with Larissa because that's how I'm doing my Zooms. And it's the same problem. I should have been able to log on right away, but having is it called an app? Is that what it's called? When you have the whatever.
Yeah.
So Monday has a really nice app that is really user friendly also. So, but that to your point, it's all in one space.
Yeah.
It's like up on the cloud.
So is it possible to, I mean, I'm hoping you overcome your technical difficulties, and could we get it in advance of our next meeting?
So that's my goal.
So we can all come, having read all of the existing priorities based on what you've done, kind of getting rid of the stuff that's been completed.
Well, to be clear, I'm not sure what all he included in the draft that he had, but I think it was a combination of both items that were on that Excel spreadsheet and also things that people
Yeah.
have shot my way that I don't think were necessarily officially adopted as part of the
Yeah.
work plan, but that were sort of suggested items to include
That's
in the
fair.
future.
And
And some of the existing items might not be as high a priority as they once were. So I think it would be really good if we could all, you know, read it ahead of time, come in, be prepared to say, you know, if you have any strong feelings about this, I just don't think this is worth the time, or we've got to do this quicker, or something like that. We can talk about that.
my goal was to go over, the real one, has everything from the Excel sheet on and the things that Larissa had sent that we had talked about, some comments in there. I did not do anything with priorities, due dates, et cetera, because that's not for me to decide. But yes, my hope will be to have a completely finished, version of this, including, again, when you push the arrow, it will have sub-items, so you can look at that, look at the comments, so you have a really good understanding of what it is if you're not sure. I'm trying to make it so it's pretty clear what it is, with just the normal task, and then the sub-item. And then, so that will give you a really good idea of to say, okay, this is what our priorities are, so we can come together and do a working meeting at the next meeting, or whatever you choose, Brian. So that then we can fill in who do we wanna maybe do some of these things, what's the priority, et cetera.
Are you gonna be available at our next meeting?
I'm gonna be available, I don't remember when the next meeting is.
I think it's the 9th.
I will be on Zoom.
Okay.
Yep.
So you will be sharing your screen most likely as we go through this, if we do it at the next meeting.
And you should be able to send us all a link so that
Yep.
we could
Yeah.
view it on our own devices and interact with it on our own devices as well, independently of what he is showing us.
I'll
And-
plan on doing that as soon as I have access and I finalize it, I'll share that with everyone.
Good luck. And the two users we're envisioning are you and Steve?
I don't know.
Or you
Whoever
and
think.
a select board account?
I only added Steve the first time to test it, to make sure it worked, and it was flawless. I mean, right away, he made it,
It
went-
could be a select board account that we
Yeah, I
don't
think
have,
we should-
because it wouldn't be an open meeting if just one of us is logging in with it.
I think that would be better than Steve.
I agree.
I think,
I just wanted,
would be surprised if Steve wanted it.
I just
But
wanted
he took
to,
it openly, like he was
Yeah.
totally fine. He
I just
was
wanted to
fine,
nip that in the
yes.
bud. I think it should be you and a select board account.
Well, if you have an idea of who that should be, I can invite that person.
I think it should be
It should
a
be
select,
the Waitsfield Selectboard email address. But the
which I don't have
risk,
access to.
You
the
could.
risk, you
I
could.
You could.
But here's the
I
thing
don't-
though,
I
is the
know-
risk is that then it might not
That's a
comply with
6-month
open meeting
probation.
law. Because if we all have access to it, then it could potentially be perceived as like a walking meeting.
I mean, I can check
But-
with
but you would-
VLCT since it's an open document.
But we would only have access one at a time.
So,
That's what I'm
So
saying.
there's
Yeah.
some questions there.
I guess,
so I
Like,
think.
it is not an open meeting if we have a file cabinet in the town office and people come in and one by one write notes on a piece of paper. That is not a walking meeting.
I believe you. I just was looking at the thing, and I would love for you to make that argument because I want it to be okay, and it seems intuitive to me that it should be. It's just that
And it should
that
not be.
Oh, so that it should be okay?
Yeah.
That it should be okay to do that, but
Because you're not in
everything
the
that
same
I,
location, in the same temporal space at the same time.
If you'd like, I can try to reach out to VLCT, because I really don't know, and I read all their policies about, they're up on our website now.
I looked at a presentation from the Secretary of
I'm
State.
gonna look more,
and-
I'm gonna look more closely into
Yeah.
this.
Well, I'm not gonna spend time if you guys wanna figure out, but if you guys wanna figure out if
We'll
VLCT says we can do it.
We'll
then
figure out
great.
that part of it, and you
You
figure
figure
out
out the
the,
actual-
Okay,
the work
well,
plan
let
part.
me know, if you guys have an email you want me to send it to, then I'll do it, how's that?
I used to work for a Vermont town that 20 minutes before every select board meeting, there'd be a series of one-on-one meetings in the hallway.
So all I wanted, if this looks good to you, I will continue moving forward with it and then share it with everyone so that we can discuss it on the next agenda or whatnot.
Great.
Okay.
Sorry
Any-
that this has been like perpetually
I know.
posted.
I'm
sorry.
I'm really, I was really embarrassed this morning.
I mean,
But it happens, it's technology.
If we had it backed up somehow too, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's
What-
on the
I mean,
line,
what-
it's on
if
the
we-
line.
If we go online with this,
And
if we do it,
You might want to save it, export it as an Excel from time to time.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
yeah.
Go for it.
just, that reminds me, it may be on the work plan already, but kind of where do files live and what does our institutional memory look like, as opposed to in everyone's individual emails.
I think that's, and I've added it to the work plan just by myself.
I'm pretty sure I asked for that too. I was like, why can't we just have access to the database? So we can just look things up by
Which
ourselves
database?
without, just,
Oh, the server?
yeah.
Fun stuff.
Yeah, that's a question for VLCT also, I actually don't know. Yes, I have added that partially, like, because of the easement conversation.
Yeah.
Like, we should have known that, and I don't know, I would have known it without Pete bringing them by. I mean, and to Fred's point, and I 100% agree, is every time we pass a policy, we put it up on the website. And if we redo a policy, then we get rid of it and put up the new policy. And that's definitely, and putting them up on the website's actually not even that hard for my very limited website abilities. And I think that will have to be each of those are one part of your point. And, like I started a technology capital improvement, like all the computers are on one sheet, so we know all they are and we have a plan. Okay, this year with our budget, we should replace this and this. So coming up with policies that ensure that we have good movement forward regardless of the select board or the administrator or the
Some
clerk.
continuity in
Yep,
the
and
knowledge base.
And
Yeah.
redundancy.
Yeah.
And if you have ideas for how to do that better, I'm all ears.
Okay,
Very good.
that's it for me.
So select board roundtable?
We had a good planning district steering committee meeting. The first part of new business was flood event lessons and opportunities, and the things we discussed. And then we had a good discussion on community development initiatives and community spaces, which, I think a lot of people recognize that times are pretty difficult right now for businesses. Visitors are down from Canada and from elsewhere, wedding bookings are down, but there is a lot of good stuff going on too. And I think people are excited, we talked about the big picture and afterthoughts and some great new businesses opening around town, and that was a neat discussion. And then there will be a plan to have a 40th anniversary party at some point in 2025 for the planning district. And that's it for me, for new stuff.
I attended sort of an open discussion at the Waitsfield UCC. I think there was a article in the paper about it that's probably worth taking a look at.
That was discussed as well, as to what the future is of that building and space.
Yeah, so that's I think a preliminary conversation with a very long runway, so there's a lot of time for them to think about it and the community to think about it, but I think that the church itself is on its way out, or trying to be on its way out of ownership, as far as I can tell. of that historic building. So,
Well, I did talk to a local resident and business owner who, when we gave the festival permit for the Roundup, they did mention that they're gonna be roping off an area that historically had been used for the Roundup. And I think how that plays out and how the Roundup impacts the property and how they maintain that roped area might be a source of future conversation.
Okay.
good to know.
So, yeah, I think it needs to be a scaled back event, and they seem to realize that, but okay, I'm gonna go to the next one, I think.
Okay.
And they were very open, like, the conversations were there, that there will be roped off, and they were like, how are we gonna do it? How are we gonna make sure it's done right?
Yeah.
And they, like, I thought very respectful to, that wish, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I think the first one is this Wednesday.
It is.
Oh,
I will
man.
not.
Is
be
it
able-
really?
I will
Is
not
it-
be able to attend.
It's in
but
2
It
days?
is in 2 days.
It is in 2 days, I
Oh, that's
believe.
good to know.
It's like March out there.
Yeah.
Snow tonight.
Are you
No.
serious? Shut the front door, really? Sorry.
Are you, really?
Did you just shut the front door?
Is it really potential for snow today? How often does that
High
happen?
elevation.
Okay, I was like,
How
my
often
poor
does that
little
happen?
apple trees, oh no. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Hey, Wednesday it's up to 56, warmest day of the week.
Hey.
Anything to add to your report?
The town administrator, I think I noted a couple of things. The installation, are you ready for this?
That was not on the White House thing.
Yeah, I don't know, I think because it came in later and then I just added it to this, and so I apologize for that.
Yeah.
It is in the, but we can talk about it, and we can still make,
Yeah.
so, you can read what I wrote. Long story short, I had reached out to, the commission, and Anne Marie was like, yes. So I reached out to the roofing company. I finally was able, part of it is because I just didn't know much.
Yeah.
I talked to Patrick,
Patrick
Sunday,
is-
yesterday, he's the salesman for East Coast roofs, East Coast Metals. We talked for a long time. He agrees that now is the time to do it, when they're doing the roof, especially because it's a cathedral ceiling. The options were fiberglass, so when they take the roof off, they fiberglass. The cost for that is $4,800 and we're just talking over Beth's office. It's the addition to the, it's an addition. Right now, she says you can see the light coming through the ceiling in certain spots. There's
Well,
no
that's because
insulation.
the roof the shingles are deteriorated.
Well, that, yes. So
Yeah, you-
so $4,800 for fiberglass, and he actually cut down the cost. There's something that's plywood that has, it's factory made, it has the foam attached to it, and so you just put those in. The cost for that is $8,000 for the
Structural
whole.
insulation panels, yeah.
What are the construction
SIPs,
installation panel? Yeah.
Structural insulation.
So that is the options. I personally feel pretty strongly that we should make sure that Beth's office is insulated, or the addition to the general weight house, so those are the two options. And I'll just say again, he wants to know tonight what everything's gonna be, because they are giving such a good deal. There's a lot of pressure.
What's the difference in our value between the two
Yeah, that's
proposals?
He said the only difference is, I asked the question, his response was, the only difference is, of course, if fiberglass that's wet, that's not good. So, and I asked about R value, and so I think that must mean our value is the same. Cause he
It
didn't,
seems like fiberglass is
I feel like that's not.
moving away from that.
Yeah, I
I
think.
don't love fiberglass.
I think zip panels are the way to go.
Yeah, I do too.
I do 3.
And I'm gonna share, I'm not jumping ahead, but, so we can finish that, but colors, which also needs to be decided. There's
For the
colors
shingles.
For the,
for the roof. So these are aluminum shingles, these, I was floored. He said all the research shows 20 to even 30% energy savings, because they're aluminum, not steel. The benefits are quite remarkable, actually. The color is guaranteed not to fade for, I think he said 30 years or 20. He said the most popular, Sorry, this is not,
Where's the slate gray that you had?
Yeah.
it's not working great. I don't know why it won't let me pull this up.
I thought
The
we-
slate gray you said is pretty popular, so I think this is the slate gray.
It wasn't a slate roof, though. It was a cedar roof. But we'd want a gray color. I don't like, because
And we can pull up the
Cedar.
website and get a better idea what it looks like, but.
Did we do cedar in the 90s? Was it asphalt before then?
my memories, it was a defunct, it was a metal roof there. But it was very poor grade, and it was very old. That's my memory, but
No, I just I think that we did cedar, and it wasn't cedar before.
that's correct. That's
Yeah.
my memory. Yeah.
Aluminum shingles.
Not only that, side note, he says, don't quote me, I think he said like in 10 years, buildings, see a savings. Like it pays off the extra cost of the roof, because they're so
Oh.
energy efficient, which I thought was pretty awesome.
Well, I think, I'm not really good at distinguishing one color from another, but it should be like a gray cedar.
I like gray, yeah.
Yeah, because cedar when it ages
Yes, exactly.
becomes
Yeah.
that gray.
What's that color right there? I'm wicked colorblind, so I'm not the person to ask.
That's hard to tell based on the lighting.
Yeah,
Or maybe he can advise us.
tell them,
Seems like
it's the bit closest thing to a gray aged cedar.
Check.
Don't mess it up.
good luck. Yeah.
So do we need a,
Quotes.
Probably need a motion on the
I'll make a
installation.
motion that we go with the,
Structural
Structural.
insulation panels or rigid foam, whatever they
yeah.
call it, rigid foam panels.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
I
Aye.
All right, so rigid foam and the closest thing to gray aged cedar, and they're 4 to 6 weeks out.
Wow, cool.
all right.
And will you make sure to coordinate with Beth on, or has she found another space?
Yeah, she found another space, and,
Okay.
and I said the moment we hear when the date is, we will let her know. And so hopefully we'll hear that within a week or so.
Great.
Super.
Anything
Oh,
else?
and let me make sure that I'm not missing anything. I think Larissa asked me to look into Vermont Heavy Timber miles. I included in the packet what the work plan was for the 2 parts of work for the covered bridge. They have all been done, it's all been paid, so I can look at it and then remind myself of what was
I
done, but
just knew that we hadn't gotten
the
an
extra,
update.
yeah, no, I think it was right. So the extra work has been done, I talked to him, he's working on a plan for, what's the name of it?
A headache bar?
A headache bar.
Which just,
I think he said actually for our town, and now the liability issues seem to be in the past. So I think towns are gonna start putting them in. So when I have more information on that, I will bring that to you.
And
Street-
outside of the headache bar, I remember, had we talked about an ordinance or something to make people responsible, or are they already responsible?
I think that's one of the things in the work plan was that I proposed based on what Fred mentioned, which was sort of damage to town property in general. And if we wanted to do something specific for like historic pieces of town property, so that it would cover the covered bridge, it would cover like the White House or whatever.
Town property, I like that one, because we had someone run into the bridge on Meadow Road and severely damaged the railing. So maybe it should be more broader than just the covered
Just the
bridge.
bridge. I think that was Brian's.
Because I'm assuming it's not, you don't have much insurance.
I mean, we do have some, but
We are, the covered bridge is insured.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, the covered bridge paid, the insurance paid for,
Okay, cool.
not
Yeah.
all the covered bridge work, because
We
we
lost
lost
$1,000 deductible.
Okay.
$69,000.
Good to know, thanks.
So that's in the works. I'll just bring up Text My Gov again, honestly, because I think this weekend it would have been really helpful in terms of coordinating with Josh, et cetera.
Yep.
So people would automatically get a message that say, please reach out to Fred, to York, to Brian, whatever, with, updating them, and everyone would get that text automatically, is my understanding. So if you all wanna move forward with that, just let me know. Street sweeping, I was told was gonna happen the week of the 19th, which is this week. I reached out to the company again, they're also called Kingsbury, but they're not the Kingsbury
They're
we're
not the
familiar
same.
with. And I've not heard back, but the plan was this week. And then, I think that's good, I feel good about that.
So, and is V-Trans doing that, or?
No,
they
we're
said
paying for
doing
that.
it? Okay.
Yeah, V-Trans, it's been very difficult figuring out their schedule. And so, you know, that's in the works, and I've been having a lot of conversations with many people in V-Trans, doing our best to collaborate on jobs.
Okay. So I did suggest pulling
Yeah, I haven't pulled that.
the minutes off the consent agenda, and the reason was,
I need to add names to this too, so if anyone, I can go back and look at the video and get names, where there's X's and in yellow. But if any of you remember, I will take those.
so, this is the April 25th minutes. And under the executive session, which was the only part of the meeting I was at, where is it? Okay, on the first page, number 2, line 18, 19, Mike Hill, on behalf of Edward and Charlene Spalding, asked that the board consider delaying the release of the agreement with those parties due to a related agreement still being in discussion.
Oh wait, sorry, can we go back? Are we talking, we're the April? Which-
Yes, April 25.
Oh, sorry,
So
I have
it's
the wrong one pulled up.
page 81 of the packet.
It sounds as though Mike Hill, on behalf of Edward and Charlene Spalding, asked that the board consider delaying the release of the agreement with those parties, referring back to the Spaldings, due to a related agreement still being in discussion. I think that needs to be clarified that they're talking about the release of Courtney Spalding
Yeah.
from the agreement.
Not the release of an agreement, yeah.
Yeah, or the release of Edward and Charlene as the parties. It's just not-
Yeah, it's not.
And then later, it does say we made a motion to accept the offer of settlement from Courtney. So just, I think it would be, we'd say, the release of Courtney Spalding from the agreement or something like that. Does that make sense?
Yep, that makes sense.
Can you give me the line number again? I don't have that one pulled up.
18, 19.
Okay.
It just needs to be clear that it's Courtney.
So, any other changes, motion on this minute?
I would move that we adopt these minutes as amended.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're all good with the consent agenda?
And
You know, it's been unclear, I think we should adopt the consent agenda and not just say, okay, it's good, so let's do a motion on it.
So I will move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I think our executive session can be done in about 3 minutes.
Yes.
Cool.
All right. It'll probably be about 4.5 minutes, because I've got something down.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
So is that,
I think
All
so.
right.
Yeah, is there a motion to move into executive session?
oh, sorry, go ahead.
Did you have something before we move into?
No, I was just
executive
gonna
session?
ask if John can leave,
Oh,
leave,
yeah.
leave,
Yes.
since all we have is adjourning after.
All right.
Thank you.